Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. We begin tonight with a quickly developing story. An evacuation notice has been issued for Fort Liard, Northwest Territories because of a wildfire. A notice is issued when a community is at increased risk because of things like fires or floods, and it's a warning for people to be prepared. Mike Westwick is a fire information officer with the government of the Northwest Territories. He joins me now from downtown Yellowknife. Mike, what is the latest on this fire burning near Fort Liard?
What we know right now is that the fire has picked up a little bit in activity. There's not a clear assessment on whether it's breached containment at this time. The high winds have meant that our aircraft are unable to fly. We'll obviously be following this very closely as the night unfolds, and more updates will be issued as needed. There's no indications currently at last update of immediate threat to Fort Liard, and our crews have been working hard under a precautionary state within Fort Liard to set up structure protection in the community.
Now, I understand that if the fire does breach the containment that you have now, your crews will have to pull back. Is that correct?
It's correct that crews are not actually active in the fire area currently as a result of the winds. That's why they're in Fort Liard, setting up that structure protection at a safe distance as a precautionary measure, I would add once again. So they are working to do that because under current wind conditions, when fire moves under those wind conditions, it would be unsafe to have crews working on direct action on that. So this is the measure that we're taking going forward. And of course, we've been hitting it with aircraft as much as we can. Currently, they are unable to access that fire due to these wind conditions. So certainly a challenging situation. I'm sure more updates to come. Currently, again, I'll hit home that there's no indication of immediate risk to Fort Liard, and we're working closely with the hamlet and emergency management partners to ensure everybody's kept abreast of the latest.
Yeah, no, thank you for being clear about that. People are not having to leave Fort Liard. This is simply a notice to people to be aware that there is a fire burning nearby. It is simply a notice and not an alert. Mike, the Highway 7 out of Fort Liard south is also closed right now because of, I understand, a different fire burning in British Columbia. Can you tell us anything about that fire?
I wouldn't be able to give you specific details, but however, we do have indications from the BC Wildfire Service that they have teams working on a lot of those northern holdover fires. This is related to that. So the highway has been shut down for safety purposes. The BC Wildfire Service is keeping in consistent contact with us about this stuff. And I would just refer you to the Wildfire Agency for the latest on things like size and potential risk there. I'm aware of some evacuation communication that's went out on that front, but you know, that work will continue by the province of BC.
So you mentioned that, you know, we are seeing an extreme wind event. We can see it outside of our studios here in Yellowknife. The wind is definitely picking up. So it's not just the Decho region facing these high winds. The town of Hay River has put a total fire ban in place until the wind event has passed. Can you paint us a picture of what's happening in the South Slave?
Yeah, certainly through the Hay district, kind of the area surrounding Hay River there, they're seeing very similar weather patterns to that in the Decho region. You know, wind gusts ranging from 50 kilometers an hour up to 85 kilometers an hour, you know, expected through tonight. Wind event is expected to start to lessen tomorrow. I should mention in the region there are two new fires in the vicinity of Hay River and Enterprise that we are investigating currently, assessing. One of them is, you know, opposite the Aurora Pellet Mill yard there. We're going to be assessing it and actioning it as needed. The town of Hay River has taken action on a fire that flared up under these winds on Patterson Road. So that work is good. They've indicated that it's contained, but you know, smoke will be visible in the area as a result of these. Additionally, there is, I should go back to the Decho while I have you here. There is a fairly large and significantly active wildfire between the Enterprise and Highway 7 junctions on Highway 1. It's suspected to have been an overwinter fire that has now flared up, previously undiscovered one. And that has the potential to impact the highway. It's burning on both sides of Highway 1 over there. We've got teams on the way to assess it further and look at appropriate actions for that moving forward. So a lot of activity today. We did know today was going to be a big fire day if there was fire that got on the landscape, and that's playing out for sure.
Now, Mike, I'm seeing a note here that Highway 1 has actually been closed because of a wildfire between Jean Marie River Access Road and the Highway 3 junction. Is that fire that you're mentioning there that's also near Enterprise?
Yes, that's right.
All right.
That's correct. Well, that's not near Enterprise. It's quite a ways from Enterprise. It's kind of in the middle of between the Highway 7 and Enterprise Junction, so kind of between there. It's about 70 or so kilometers at the smoke report level when we received it there, estimated away from Jean Marie River as a note there.
So, and you mentioned that there were 2 new fires that have started. Are there any fires that have started outside of the Decho or South Slave that you're going to be watching this weekend?
Certainly, there was an additional fire that we're just kind of starting to get information here on. Actually, a suspected person-caused fire about a kilometer outside of Sumba and that fire is being actioned immediately by ground crews right now. There's not a risk to the community. The wind is blowing away from there. There's significant burned area surrounding it from last year. As you'll recall, there was an ignition operation to protect that community. But at any rate, our crews are taking action in that area to action that fire and keep there from being potential of that becoming an issue down the road.
Anything else, Mike, that we should know about before the weekend?
So what I would say is that with the extreme weather conditions that we're seeing out there right now, it is especially important for everyone watching here to do everything they can to keep person-caused fires off the landscape. While the wind event is expected to die down a bit heading into the weekend, we're still expecting to see very hot, dry weather across much of the south of the territory. So never leave your fires unattended. If you've done brush burning in your yard in the past, really go check those areas and make sure that they're completely out. Soak, stir, and soak any fire that you might have outside, and repeat that until the air is cool to the air above is cool to the touch. And most critically, we really strongly urge people to avoid using fire in areas where fire danger is high or extreme, which is going to be looking like a lot of the south of the territory right now. Follow nwtfire.com for more updates and to get fire danger in your region.
Mike, as always, we appreciate you being on the show to bring us these updates. I hope the weekend is calmer for you than today was and for everybody across the territory. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as we mentioned, the highway south of Fort Liard is currently closed all from the community all the way to the BC boundary. High winds have also forced the government to suspend the ferry crossing at the Liard River. So those winds definitely very fierce out there right now. Mike was talked a lot about the winds through the South Slave region. We talked about the fact that there are 2 highways in the NWT that are currently closed, both Highway 7 from Fort Liard to the BC border and the highway around Jean Marie River as well because of fire. CBC Northbeat host Megan Roberts is in the South Slave region right now, and I can hear the wind behind her there. Megan, Mike has told us about this wind event that is happening, but you're there experiencing it. What's happening?
It's certainly very strong winds, Shannon. We actually started feeling them this morning in Hay River before we drove up to Fort Providence, which is where I am now. So even in Hay River this morning, we were feeling those strong gusts. And then certainly when we arrived in Fort Providence, you could feel it really picking up. The trees around me are bending and waving, and then behind me in the Mackenzie, sometimes you can see some whitecaps coming up just because this wind is so strong and pushing it. We went to the northern store at one point, and one of the doors that would have been facing into the wind, so the one that would get slammed shut, that one was locked so people wouldn't use it and hurt themselves. And there's been a few big enough gusts to take people's hats off, including my own earlier today, and to kind of almost have people bracing themselves just because because it's so strong. I've also been feeling a few intermittent raindrops around, not anything completely strong, but a few here and there. So certainly a very, very strong wind event, as you called it, big gusts here in Fort Prov.
All right, I mean, Megan, I certainly hope you don't lose that beautiful hat you're wearing right now. I will say, I'm just seeing another note here that the ferry has reopened to Fort Simpson, so on the Liard crossing, so that is great news. Evacuees last year, of course, passed through Fort Providence, a lot of them, you and I included. I know that you've been talking to people in that community about what they're doing to prepare for this year. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So wildfire season has arrived, as we know now. It arrived again quite early this year. And so people are already thinking about what to do to make sure that they can handle not only an influx of people, but also their own emergency situation. So I spoke to people from Big River as well as the Northern store today, and they both told me that they're doing things like stocking up on essentials, making sure that there's a lot of, say, bottled water, for example, available, because that's something that a lot of people tend to stock up on in the middle of an emergency. And they're also making sure that their gas levels in their tanks are high so they can meet any increased demand, again, in the case of an emergency. You know, you and I waited for hours in line at Fort Providence last year during the evacuation. We saw those huge long lines. So just wanting to make sure that if anything happens again, that those supplies are ready to go and at levels that are already high. Additionally, I kind of just asked people how they're feeling ahead of the fire season here in Fort Providence, and some people are feeling a little bit nervous. That's kind of vibes I got really throughout the South Slave, is a little bit of nerves. Antsy is the word that one person used yesterday. And others are less concerned and they're confident that they'll be okay this year. Shannon?
All right, Megan, thank you so much for this. We appreciate it. Safe travels back to Yellowknife, and we'll see you back here on the show on Monday. Now, just to recap a little bit there, we do have two highways closed in the NWT, Highway 7 south out of Fort Liard to the NWT border, and Highway 1 between the Jean Marie River Access Road and the Highway 3 junction. But the ferry that was out of the water at the Liard River crossing is now back in and running. The winds have made that possible, have died down enough to make that possible. A hydrologist with the government of the Northwest Territories says the shores of Great Slave Lake near Yellowknife are shocking. Water levels are at a record low for this time of year, and the proof is in the mud and the rocks. There's so much exposed where the water should be. Levels are so low, people can walk to some of the houseboats. Ryan Connon says what people in Yellowknife are seeing right now is historic.
Right now, we're about between 25 and 30 centimeters lower than the previous low has ever been. So when we look at that number relative to the scale or the magnitude of change that we expect to see, it's quite drastic.
Connon says Great Slave Lake is relatively flat, and the dramatic drops will be the same in other places, including Hay River. He says the cause of all this can be summed up in two words: extreme drought. The NWT's Ombud is asking for fairness from the territorial government, especially in times of disaster. In her annual report released yesterday, Colette Langlois says extreme weather events like floods and fires should no longer be considered novel or isolated events, but something the government should expect and plan for. And when it does, it needs to consider everyone in the territory.
For a lot of people, it can be an inconvenience if they have to line up for a service. For some people, it could be a huge barrier and possibly a total barrier to actually accessing that service. So if you're an elder who's looking after your partner who's, in early stages of dementia, or if you're a caregiver for a couple of small children, or if you've got some mobility issues or other health issues that prevent you just from that physical access, it can become really difficult. The government can't solve every problem. They can't make people whole after disasters in a lot of cases, but there are some things that can be done to not make things worse.
Now, Langlois also says the Ombud office should increase its capacity. She says 2 positions are not enough. Langlois served a 5-year term as Ombud and will be stepping down from the role this summer. Well, it's going to be a busy weekend in Dawson City, Yukon. The town is hosting the Association of Yukon Communities annual general meeting. Chris McIntyre is there and has more for us.
150 people are here at the Palace Grand Theatre to attend the AGM. Now, according to AYC President Ted Laking, he says that's a record-setting number for attendance. Here for the weekend are representatives from the federal, the territorial, and municipal governments, as well as keynote speaker, Olympic gold medalist Sammy Jo Smalls, and best-selling author and Humboldt bus crash survivor Caleb Dahlgren. Now, conversations throughout the weekend will range from the comprehensive municipal grant to the emergency preparedness regarding forest fires, as well as the 2026 Arctic Winter Games that will be held in Whitehorse. But according to Laking, there is much more than just an agenda to follow. He says information shared this weekend is important, but so are the relationships being built as the information is being shared. Conversations and presentations will happen until Sunday afternoon. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
The Northwest Territories Chief Electoral Officer wants the voting age in the territory lowered from 18 years old to 16. It was one of a few recommendations he made to MLAs in a recent report. He said allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote could be a way to improve turnout for first-time voters.
So Scotland lowered the voting age to 16. Austria has, Wales, Brazil. And the evidence I've looked at from those jurisdictions show that 16 and 17-year-olds, one, are far more likely to vote than 18 to 24-year-olds. But they're also more likely to vote in the next election and the one following that.
Dunbar said this is likely because teens still in high school have more support when it comes to voting. They can get help from parents or schools. But older teens might have to figure it out alone, especially if they leave the territory for post-secondary education. During the territorial election last fall, voter turnout was the lowest for people between 18 and 30, and the highest voter turnout was for people over the age of 60 years old. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami is hopeful legislation to create a university in Inuit Nunangat could be tabled in the coming months. ITK and other elected Inuit leadership met with the Prime Minister in Ottawa yesterday for the latest meeting of the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee. The idea of a university has been discussed for nearly a decade, but ITK President Nathan Obed says now that a mission document has been laid out, work can start on identifying what the university will provide.
There's been a heavy focus on Inuktitut and language in general. There's also a heavy focus on governance and rights, also on culture. But then there also is space for disciplines that are more universal in nature.
Also discussed at the meeting was the latest federal budget and the advancement of the Inuit Nunangat policy to recognize the territory as a distinct geopolitical space. We have a correction to issue from a previous story. On Wednesday, we aired a report about a settlement in a class action lawsuit against the governments of the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. The suit was brought on by victims of former teacher Maurice Clockley. He taught in Clyde River and Resolute Bay between 1969 and 1981. On Wednesday, we reported that the maximum settlement for each plaintiff eligible to receive one was $250,000. That was according to a news release from the law firm representing the plaintiffs. However, in a copy of the settlement agreement obtained by CBC News, the maximum compensation is actually capped at $200,000. What do fish scraps, spent grain, and wood chips have in common? They're key ingredients in fish compost. And a Yellowknife woman is on the verge of selling her first batch. The CBC's Leni Lambrink brings us that story.
Stephanie Vaillancourt fillets a lot of fish, and at the end of the day, there are a lot of fish scraps. She used to haul it all back to Great Slave Lake.
It's a bit of a pain because, I mean, like, they're heavy, like, those bins are heavy. It's like more hauling, more heavy lifting for us, more damage on your gear. Like, I have to use specific bins for those because, you know, they get kind of dirty.
Now she doesn't have to worry about all that. Another entrepreneur is taking those unwanted fish scraps, turning it into something people do want, fish compost.
in Yellowknife, people love gardening. There's a big push for sustainability, for growing food and food security, and the reality of it is that we don't have really good soil or soil amendment. So about everything is imported from south, and I just thought it'd be a great way to actually produce something that is made from local ingredient and go back locally.
Gignac has fine-tuned her compost recipe. Fish is the nitrogen, wood chips are the carbon. Gignac adds grain that's been used to make beer at NWT Brewing too. She's chosen the in-vessel composting method, so it all gets thrown into one big $75,000 contraption.
So once you put your raw material in, it's just nature happens. So I'm not doing anything else, it's just a controlled environment. And then organisms that decompose matters will start working their magic, and as they do, they produce a lot of heat. So the heat rises in there, the moisture is controlled, and then with the rotation, it introduces a little bit more oxygen into the process. It takes about 15 minutes to complete the full rotation, and then it moves the compost a little bit along this long cylinder every time I do one rotation, and then as it travels to the end, it starts to settle, and then it exits at the end in a big pile.
Market gardener France Benoit used to get a truckload of chicken poop from Hay River every spring. She used it to fertilize her vegetables. This year, she's making the switch, joining a long list of people waiting for Gignac's first batch.
The big selling feature is that it is a product that is from Yellowknife, using resources from here. So I try to always make the best environmental choice. So to have a product that is not shipped from far away, be it Hay River or elsewhere. And the other thing that I really like about the product is that it will now be available all year.
Gignac is hoping to make her first deliveries in mid-May. As the saying goes, there's a lot of fish in the sea. And in Yellowknife, she's hoping there will be a lot of fish in people's gardens too. Lainey Lambrink, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Well, Gavin McKenna and his gold medal are back home in the Yukon. The 16-year-old is in Whitehorse after leading Team Canada to gold at the Under-18 World Championships in Finland. He set a record for Canada with 20 points. McKenna is projected to go first in the 2026 NHL draft. He met with CBC's George Morados earlier this week.
3 in the game, Gavin McKenna. What a tournament for Team Canada.
That was probably one of the best moments I've ever had. Yeah, just seeing that puck go in, knowing like that we kind of sealed the deal there. It was pretty unreal. It's something that I'll remember forever.
Yeah, just that final game, it probably couldn't have been scripted better. Being down 3-1 going into the third period and then have them take a penalty, it's an unbelievable game.
What was it like having your dad in the stands to see this amazing moment?
Yeah, it was unbelievable for sure. He's always one of my biggest supporters, and I wouldn't be here without him. And yeah, for him to be there, he doesn't get to watch a ton of my games in person, so to have him be there and watch a game like that, it's pretty cool. And yeah, I got to hang out with him quite a bit while I was there.
Obviously, coming from such a great place like Whitehorse, I'm super proud, and you know, Whitehorse is starting to become a bit of a hockey city, and it's definitely cool to see. I obviously want to kind of make my mark and kind of leave a good name for myself around Whitehorse in the city, and you know, I've had lots of support from the city, so I kind of want to pay it back as much as I can, helping out with the community and stuff. So yeah, I'm super grateful of where I come from.
My name is Peter Wiley. This video. Wow, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah. He's not cool, but he set the record for Team Canada. Got 20 points at the tournament. Well, congratulations. Thank you. After, I'm glad I stopped these. That's what's going on. Yeah, another day.
Yeah, you as well.
Welcome back home.
Yeah, thank you very much.
He takes his stick and opens up the whole net for himself. He doesn't stay with his stick in one position. He moves it where he's got the backhand move. What a great play.
What a great story. Our thanks to George Morados for that one. Well, friends of William Taguna are heaping praise on the Inuit music icon. Taguna will be inducted to the Order of Arts and Letters of Quebec next month. Taguna was one of the first Inuit artists to get his music recorded at CBC's Northern Service broadcast recordings in 1978. One person who knows him well over the span of his career is Patrick Nagel. The former CBC Nunavut station manager remembers Taguna pushing the broadcaster to get more Inuit artists into professional recording studios.
And it inspired the idea of top quality Inuktitut, original Inuktitut material, musical material. And, that continues to this day. And people are expanding the boundaries of that all the time.
Nagel says Taguna is a visionary journalist as well, with his ability to analyze and tell stories on a deeper level. Well, William Taguna started working at CBC in 1982. During his 30-year career, he covered many major stories, from the Quebec referendum to the creation of the Nunavut regional government. He says in the 1980s, he helped change the way Inuit journalists questioned local politicians.
I went in there at the right time. I've always enjoyed politics, very much so, but never want to be a politician. As one person said, I think you are going to be a political student your whole life. And I think when you're a journalist, you are a political student. You don't want to become a politician, but you're very interested in what they're doing, and you want to ask them a lot of questions that maybe they don't want to answer. And that happened just before Nunavut. I was in Rankin Inlet, Frobisher Bay at the time, with Jonah Kelly and Josie Kushuak, many of those people that used to be around. And we learned to not just give a microphone to a politician anymore. Before that, some of the broadcasters used to almost give the mic to the politician and say whatever you want. We said, no more of that. We're going to ask you questions. We're going to ask some very difficult questions that you probably don't want to answer. We're going to ask you questions that may be really embarrassing for you or whatever, but we're going to ask you those kind of questions. And we started that trend back in the 80s, because our mentality was, if we're going to be successful in arguing our points with Ottawa, with these seasoned politicians, our own politicians better know their stuff. And, as journalists, we told ourselves we're going to expose somebody about how weak they may be or how strong they really are. So let's ask them those difficult questions. And, a lot of times we got our own politicians very angry at us. Because I remember back in the early 70s, some of the journalists used to be scolded if they asked a politician a difficult question. We told ourselves, well, those days are over. Our politicians are seasoned enough, strong enough to be able to withstand journalists at their best.
Well, that is Northbeat for tonight. I'm Shannon Scott. For updates on the fire situation in the Northwest Territories over the weekend, we'll have the up-to-date information on our website, cbc.ca/north, and also NWT Fire posts updates on its Facebook page, so you can go there as well. Thank you for watching. Have a safe weekend. Megan Roberts is back on Monday.